Welcome to the New Deal and FDR, 1932 to 1939, Part 2 of 2. This is Melinda Klein. The 1930s in the United States was dominated by the Great Depression. It also witnessed programs to jumpstart the economy, mainly the New Deal. The New Deal was the name President Franklin D. Roosevelt gave to the series of programs created from 1933 through 37 with the goal of relief, recovery, and reform of the United States economy during the Great Depression. The British government during the 1930s was unable to adopt major programs to stop its depression. That led to collapse of the Labour Party and replacement in 1931 by a national coalition. As a result, there was no equivalent of the New Deal in Britain. In Nazi Germany, economic recovery was pursued through wage controls, suppression of unions, and spending programs such as public works. Large-scale rearmament came later in the 1930s. In Mussolini's Italy, the recovery of economic controls of his corporate state were tightened. In the Soviet Union, Stalin continued his massive program of economic planning and state ownership. President Roosevelt was the only president to serve more than 2 terms, at least to date. In 1947, shortly after his 4th term, the United States Congress limited presidential terms to 3 per president. The 22nd Amendment of the U.S. Constitution sets such a limit. The U.S. Congress passed the amendment on March 21, 1947, and it was ratified by 1951. Roosevelt's most famous legacies include the Social Security system and the regulation of Wall Street. FARA's main goal was alleviating adult unemployment. In order to achieve this goal, FARA provided state assistance for the unemployed and their families. FARA had a 2-year run from 1933 to 1935 in which it gave $3.1 billion to operate local work projects. FARA provided work for over 20 million people and developed facilities on public lands across the country. The Civilian Conservation Corps was a work relief program for young men established in March 1933 during FDR's first 100 days in office. It was a part of the New Deal designed to combat the poverty and unemployment of the Great Depression. While this program was intended to help youth escape the cities, city boys were reluctant to join, and most of the enrollees came from small towns and rural areas, working for $1 a day on conservation projects. The CCC constructed many buildings and trails in state parks, national parks that are still used today. The Tennessee Valley Authority is a federally owned corporation that was created in 1933 to provide navigation, flood control, electricity generation, fertilizer manufacturing, and economic development in the Tennessee River Valley, a region that was hit particularly hard during the Great Depression. The TVA offered country and hill people not only electricity for the first time, but in an affordable way. This agency that delivered power and regulated their own authority gave this rural region much-needed jobs during the 1930s. 1935 and the WPA would begin the series of second New Deal programs. This federal work program was the largest and most comprehensive, employing 3 million people. These employees built airports, school buildings, libraries, roads, and golf courses. We know that 13% of the workforce was also female. Even with all the New Deal projects and legislation to offer relief to victims of the Depression, conservatives were not all sure Roosevelt was good for the nation. In fact, business owners believed that the president was leading the nation towards socialism. By 1934, the conservative revolt was in full swing, and they had gained control of Congress, but it was obvious that most Americans wholeheartedly approved of what Roosevelt was doing for them. His fireside chats broadcasting to millions of Americans over the radio aided greatly in his popularity. The Dust Bowl was a result of a series of dust storms in the central United States and Canada from 1931 to 39, caused by decades of inappropriate farming techniques, with buffalo herds that fertilized the soil displaced by wheat farming, followed by severe drought. This ecological disaster caused an exodus from Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and the surrounding Great Plains, with over 500,000 Americans left homeless. Many migrated west looking for work. The number of radios purchased in the 1930s steadily increased. By 1939, 27.5 million Americans owned household radios. Not just a source of music and news, the radio was the center of the living room, capturing the attentions of family members. Radio was also responsible for one of the most widespread mass hysteria events in American history, the broadcast of War of the Worlds as a Halloween special, October 30th, 1938. According to historians, many people missed or ignored the opening credits of the news program, in which it was reported that a Martian rocket capsule had landed in New Jersey. This created mass hysteria. Minorities had it worse than working class or poor whites in America. In general, Black unemployment was triple of whites, and wages paid were considerably less than of whites when they could find it. Mexicans and Asians had severe difficulties as well. Oftentimes they would be rounded up, deported, and even if they had the proper residency papers or were naturalized American citizens. At this time, the police and immigration worked together to round up immigrants, either holding them or transporting back to their native country. Late in 1936, civil war broke out in Spain. A group of military officers led by General Francisco Franco attempted to overthrow the recently elected government. Because Franco represented the fascist elements in Spain, he received military support from Hitler and Mussolini. On the other side, Joseph Stalin aided the government. This civil war was brutal, fought with extreme cruelty on both sides. Before it was over, more than 600,000 people were killed. President Roosevelt was re-elected in 1936, but within months of his re-election, the New Deal programs were in trouble. After the recession of 1937, Roosevelt asked Congress to create a commission to examine reform and the national economy. Despite achievements by President Roosevelt and Congress by 1938, the era of the New Deal was over. By 1938, the President and Congress turned their attentions as the European political atmosphere was preparing for war with Germany once again.